You're sitting there, staring at a blank piece of paper or empty goal-setting app, completely paralyzed. Everyone talks about setting goals like it's obvious what you should want, but what if you genuinely have no idea? What if the harder you try to manufacture motivation, the more empty and directionless you feel? The shocking truth is that traditional goal-setting advice is completely backwards for people who feel genuinely lost. Today, I'm going to show you 3 counterintuitive methods that bypass the usual find your passion nonsense and actually work, even when you have absolutely no clue what you want from life. 2 years ago, I hit what I can only describe as motivational rock bottom. I'd tried every goal-setting framework, SMART goals, vision boards, 90-day sprints, and nothing stuck. While everyone around me seemed driven by clear ambitions, I felt like I was floating through life without any real direction or desire. The breaking point came during a particularly brutal self-help workshop where the facilitator asked us to write down our burning desires. I sat there for 20 minutes with a blank page, fighting back tears of frustration. Everyone else was scribbling furiously, while I couldn't even fake enthusiasm for anything long enough to write it down. That night, I had a realization that changed everything. What if my lack of obvious goals wasn't a problem to solve, but information to use? What if the very thing I was seeing as a weakness was actually pointing towards something important? This connects to fascinating research from a psychologist who found that people who are intrinsically motivated, driven by internal satisfaction rather than external rewards, often struggle with traditional goal setting because they're wired differently. They need to discover what matters to them through experience, not through analysis. The modern world has created what I call goal inflation. We're told not just to have goals, but to have audacious goals, life-changing goals, goals that will transform us. This puts enormous pressure on people who are naturally more exploratory and process-oriented rather than outcome-focused. Here's the counterintuitive truth that nobody talks about. Having no clear goals often means you're more in touch with reality than people who claim to know exactly what they want. Most passionate people are actually just good at convincing themselves they want things that look impressive or socially acceptable. My friend, in just a moment, I'm going to share the exact 3-step system I discovered that works when you have zero motivation and no clear direction. But first, we need to understand why the absence of obvious goals might actually be the most honest position you can take. The fundamental problem with most goal-setting advice is that it assumes you already know what you want and just need better systems to achieve it. But what if you don't know what you want because you haven't had enough varied experiences to discover your preferences? What if your lack of goals is actually your psyche protecting you from pursuing things that aren't authentically yours? Think about it. How many people do you know who achieved their goals only to realize they didn't actually want what they thought they wanted? The divorce after the dream wedding, the burnout after the promotion, the existential crisis after the business success. Maybe not knowing what you want is actually wisdom in disguise. This reframe completely changed how I approached my own directionlessness. Instead of seeing it as a problem to fix, I started treating it as valuable information about my authentic self, trying to protect me from pursuing borrowed dreams. But how do you actually move forward when you have no clear direction? That's exactly what I'm about to show you. So after months of trying every conventional approach and failing, I accidentally discovered what actually works. I call it the V.O.I.D method, 4 steps that embrace the emptiness instead of fighting it. V stands for value archaeology. Instead of trying to create goals from scratch, you dig into your past to uncover moments when you felt genuinely engaged, regardless of the outcome. O stands for obsession observation. Rather than forcing interest in meaningful pursuits, you pay attention to what you naturally gravitate toward when nobody's watching. I stands for irritation investigation. Instead of focusing on what you love, you examine what consistently bothers or frustrates you, often revealing hidden values and potential directions. D stands for micro decision making. Rather than committing to big, scary goals, you make tiny decisions that gradually reveal larger patterns and preferences. Let me tell you, most people's approach to goal finding fails because it's too ambitious and abstract. Here's what it typically looks like. You sit down and try to envision your ideal life 5 years from now. You create elaborate vision boards with houses, cars, and lifestyle images that look good but don't connect to any actual experience. You set impressive sounding goals based on what successful people do rather than what genuinely interests you. When you don't feel motivated to work toward these manufactured dreams, you assume something's wrong with your discipline or mindset. I spent years in this cycle. I'd get excited about someone else's success story and immediately adopt their goals as my own. I wanted to be an entrepreneur because entrepreneurs seemed successful, or a writer because writers seemed creative, or a coach because coaches seemed fulfilled. But none of these aspirations connected to my actual lived experience or natural inclinations. The problem with this approach is that it treats goal setting like costume shopping. You try on different identities to see what looks good rather than discovering what actually fits your authentic self. What if the very absence of obvious passion is your psyche's way of insisting that you find something genuinely yours rather than borrowed from others? This insight led me to develop a completely different approach, one that starts with confusion rather than clarity. Let me walk you through exactly how to implement each component of the V.O.I.D method when you're starting from complete blankness. Starting with value archaeology, you need to mine your past for moments of genuine engagement that you might have dismissed as unimportant. This isn't about career achievements or major milestones. It's about small moments when you lost track of time or felt unusually energized. Set aside 2 hours and write down every memory you can recall of feeling genuinely absorbed in an activity. Don't filter for practicality or importance. Include childhood experiences, random conversations, problems you helped friends solve, or tasks that others found boring but you enjoyed. For me, this process revealed a pattern I'd never noticed. I consistently felt energized when explaining complex ideas in simple terms, whether I was helping a classmate understand math, teaching my grandmother to use her smartphone, or breaking down work concepts for new employees. These weren't career moments, just natural responses to situations. Look for themes across different contexts. What types of problems did you naturally want to solve? What kinds of activities made you forget to check your phone? What conversations left you feeling more energized afterward? Let me know in the comments below. What patterns do you notice when you think about moments you felt genuinely engaged versus just productive or successful? I'm curious because these authentic engagement experiences often reveal preferences we've been overlooking in favor of what we think we should want. For obsession observation, you need to become a detective of your own attention. Instead of trying to develop interests, pay attention to what already captures your focus without effort. Keep a natural gravitation log for 1 week. Every time you find yourself naturally drawn to something, a conversation topic, a problem, a type of content, a specific aspect of your work, write it down. Don't judge whether it's meaningful or practical. Just notice where your attention goes when it's not being directed. You might discover you're naturally drawn to optimization problems, human behavior patterns, design principles, or system inefficiencies. These organic interests often point toward work and goals that won't feel forced because they align with your natural curiosity. I noticed I consistently found myself analyzing communication breakdowns, why some explanations clicked while others fell flat, why certain presentations were compelling while others were boring. This wasn't something I forced myself to think about, it's just where my mind went during downtime. For irritation investigation, flip the script entirely and examine what consistently bothers you. Often, our strongest reactions reveal our deepest values and point toward meaningful work we could do in the world. Make a list of things that regularly frustrate you: systemic problems, inefficiencies, injustices, or recurring issues you notice. Then ask, what would need to exist in the world for this problem to be solved? Often, the thing that irritates you most is pointing toward your potential contribution. My biggest irritation was watching people struggle to understand things that seemed obvious once properly explained. This frustration eventually led me toward work that involved translating complex concepts into accessible formats, turning an irritation into a purpose. What came out of this process changed everything for me, especially how I see goals and direction. I'll share that shift with you in just a moment. But first, let's walk through the final step that brings it all together. For micro decision making, you need to resist the urge to make big commitments and instead focus on tiny experiments that reveal preferences without pressure. Choose one theme that emerged from your archaeology, observation, or irritation work and commit to exploring it for just 7 days. This might mean having one conversation with someone who works in a related field, spending 30 minutes researching the topic online, trying one small version of the activity, reading one article, or watching one video about it. The key is to make the commitment so small that you can't fail, and the time frame so short that you can't get stuck. After 7 days, notice. Did this feel energizing or draining? Did it spark further curiosity or confirm disinterest? The breakthrough insight that changed everything for me was this: Goals aren't something you have. They're something you grow into through gradual alignment with your authentic preferences. Instead of trying to manufacture big dreams, I started making tiny decisions based on what felt right in the moment. I agreed to explain a complex process to a colleague because it seemed interesting, not because I had a career plan. I volunteered to help a friend with their presentation because I enjoyed the challenge, not because I was building toward anything specific. Over months, these micro decisions accumulated into clear patterns that eventually crystallized into genuine goals, but only after I'd experienced enough to know what actually fit me, rather than what looked good on paper. The power of this approach is that it removes the pressure that paralyzes people who don't have obvious passions. Instead of needing to know where you're going, you just need to know what feels right for the next week. As you implement the V.O.I.D method, be aware of these 4 common mistakes that prevent people from discovering authentic direction. 1. The passion myth. Most people believe they need to feel passionate about something before pursuing it, but research shows that passion typically develops after competence, not before it. Waiting to feel passionate keeps you stuck in analysis rather than experimentation. I spent years waiting for something to call to me with obvious excitement, but my most meaningful work emerged from activities that initially felt mildly interesting rather than thrilling. Passion grew through engagement, not the other way around. The fix is to lower your emotional bar. Look for mild curiosity rather than burning passion. Follow what feels slightly interesting rather than waiting for something that feels life-changing. 2. The productivity trap. Many people can't explore authentic interests because they feel guilty about any activity that doesn't immediately produce results. This productivity obsession prevents the kind of open-ended exploration that reveals genuine preferences. I used to feel guilty about wasting time on things I enjoyed if they didn't connect to obvious career advancement. This prevented me from discovering what actually energized me because I was always trying to make everything instrumental. The solution is to give yourself explicit permission for non-productive exploration. Schedule time for activities that serve no purpose other than curiosity. Treat this as essential research, not time wasting. 3. The comparison trap. Social media creates the illusion that everyone else has clear goals and obvious passion, making your uncertainty feel abnormal. This comparison pressure leads to adopting other people's goals rather than discovering your own. I constantly felt behind because other people seemed so certain about their directions while I was still figuring things out. This led me to rush into commitments based on what looked impressive rather than what felt authentic. The remedy is to remember that social media shows results, not process. Most successful people went through long periods of uncertainty and experimentation before finding their direction. They just don't post about those parts. 4. The scale trap. People often think meaningful goals must be big, impressive, or world-changing. This creates pressure to find something grandiose rather than something genuinely fitting, leading to goals that are motivating in theory, but exhausting in practice. I used to dismiss interests that seemed too small or not ambitious enough. I wanted goals that would impress others rather than goals that would sustain me through daily execution. The antidote is to embrace what psychologists call proximal goals. Smaller, more immediate objectives that align with your natural inclinations rather than your aspirational identity. Often, meaningful work emerges from small interests that grow over time, rather than grand visions that shrink under pressure. When you stop trying to manufacture goals and start discovering them through authentic exploration, when you treat your directionlessness as information rather than a problem, you create the conditions for genuine purpose to emerge organically. This isn't about lowering your standards or accepting mediocrity. It's about finding goals that are truly yours rather than borrowed from others. Goals that sustain you through difficulty because they connect to who you actually are rather than who you think you should be. As author Cal Newport writes, passion comes after you put in the hard work to become excellent at something valuable, not before. Remember, in a world obsessed with having clear goals, the courage to explore without knowing where you're going is actually the fastest path to finding something genuinely worth pursuing. If you found this video helpful, this next video right here will take you even further. Your choice, your life. Start now.